Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to the next installment of our e-bike review series where we pitted 10 of the best e-bikes in North America head to head against each other. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Trek Powerfly LT7 Plus. This is Trek's long travel Powerfly. So that's a 160 RockShox Yari RL fork in the front and a 150 RockShox Deluxe RL shock in the back. Power comes from a Bosch Performance CX motor with a 500 watt-hour battery that is integrated but also removable on the bike. It is a side load design which helps with the sealing of the battery and also the structural integrity of the frame. This bike retails for $5,499. This is the aluminum model. There are higher end models, and for just a couple $100 more, you can get the carbon model. Same geo, a little bit better spec, and also a carbon frame, so it's a pretty good deal. Really, the biggest defining feature of this bike, aside from the nice adjustable geometry, is the 475mm chainstays. So all of the geo is on our website at theloam.com. You can click the link in the description. But it won the title of Best Climbing E-Bike in our whole shootout. And that was really largely due to, one, the body positioning, the suspension design, but also the 475mm chainstays. That is very, very long. And that was a conscious decision made by Trek. It's actually the longest chainstays in our review of all 10 bikes. So what does that mean? Trek basically surveyed a bunch of riders. They met with consumers and asked them what they wanted in an e-bike, and most of them said that they wanted a bike that can climb well. And one of the biggest things that helps that is chainstays. So the longer your chainstays, the more your weight is centered in the center of the bike, the better traction you have while climbing, and the less likely you are to loop out backwards. So this bike, you could climb literally vertical walls. We would routinely, during testing, have climbing contests between each other where all the testers would hop on this bike and see who could make it up this crazy steep section. And yeah, by far and large, this was the best climbing bike out of the bunch. The flip side of that, of course, is that the long chainstays make it almost impossible to manual. And they do make it so that when the trail gets tight and twisty, it is a little bit harder to flick this bike around. The Norco Sight VLT, for example, has much shorter chainstays, and it is no problem to just flick the rear end around, get around a corner, roost out sideways. Like, you know, that bike was very snappy and fun. The Trek Powerfly has a totally different ride dynamic. Those chainstays also make it very stable at speed. This is a bike that is perfectly happy flying at Mach chicken and will not lose composure whatsoever. A lot of that's also due to the suspension design. We're really a fan of Trek's suspension design on a lot of their bikes, whether it is the Remedy or the Slash or anything else that we reviewed this year. They've all been exceptional. So let's talk a little more about this bike. This is actually the longest bike that we've had in this review series. I picked this bike up in August at the launch, and I've had it since then. So I've put a ton of miles in this bike, everything from gnarly riding in Green River, Utah. I actually did a lot of crazy shoots and stuff like that on this bike. And also just local, you know, fire road terrain. You know, this is a bike that I am intimately familiar with. This was also one of the first bikes that we rode that had the new Bosch Performance CX motor with the e-mtb mode. That was a really awesome thing. We really liked the Bosch system. One flaw, however, especially coupled with the 2.8-inch tires, is that the chain line is incredibly close to the tire. We found that in muddy conditions, the chain will actually hit the tire or the mud will hit the chain, depositing the mud on the chain and right into the small gear. Since it's a gear reduction motor design, there's a small cog in the front with a rail on either side basically, and it's the perfect setup for mud packing up. So if we were riding this bike in the mud, we would have to frequently stop, get a stick actually, or a screwdriver and clean the mud out of that front chainring, which was an absolute pain. So that is a huge flaw in the Bosch design, especially on this bike with the 2.8-inch tires. I actually swapped the 2.8 out for a 2.6 in the rear just for that reason, and that completely stopped the mud buildup issue and also made the bike a little bit more lively. I will say it's an interesting thing. So it's hard to say, you know, my job is to tell you guys what I think about these bikes and trying to describe the feeling of riding them. And one thing that I've struggled to convey with the Powerfly was that even though it had these long chainstays, it had, you know, this stuff, I had this weird unshakable confidence on the Powerfly, especially in corners. So on that bike, I was able to control drifts, go into corners that I wouldn't normally be able to hang on to on most bikes. And I really can't tell you why. I think it's a combination of the good geo, I think it's a combination of the good suspension design, and also the compliance of the 2.8-inch tires, but I literally felt untouchable on this bike, and I still do, and it's really, really fun to ride, really confidence inspiring, and it is truly one of my favorite e-bikes of 2019. I think Trek nailed it. You know, a bike isn't for everything, you know, like if you want a bike that climbs really well, I think the Powerfly LT is a great bike, but it's also a bike that descends well. You know, it isn't quite as playful as the Norcosite VLT. You're not gonna be able to manual it, you're not gonna be able to, you know, jib it around the trail quite as easily, but I don't think all bikes need to do that. You know, they don't all need to be fighting for that same title. You know, every bike has its little niche and place. And I think if you're a rider looking to do all-day epics, if you're a rider that is looking for a, you know, pretty good all-around bike, and more importantly, if you're a rider that likes to climb steep terrain for a reward, the Trek Powerfly LT7 Plus is a great option. You know, it's the complete package. I will say that I was a little bit let down with the RockShox Yari RL front fork. I did think it was a little bit too flexy, and I think that it was one of the only weak points in the spec of this bike. Hard charging riders will also probably benefit from a shock with a reservoir on it, but you know, that's an easier upgrade, and you can also pay for the more expensive models. The LT7 Plus that we reviewed is actually one of the, you know, the lower end models. It's more affordable, coming in at $5,499, which is pretty reasonable. So all in all, you know, the Trek Powerfly LT7 Plus is one of my favorite bikes for 2019. It's an incredibly good climbing bike. It has a pretty solid spec, and it just has this amazingly confident ride about it. If you want to know more about this bike, head to our website. I have a written review there about this bike, photos, geo spec, all that stuff. Go check that out. That is in the link of the description of this video. If you are cross shopping, keep in mind we have a bunch of other great reviews. So check out our YouTube channel, check out our website, and you can figure out what e-bike is best for you. Thanks for watching, and see you guys out in the trails.